Hey everyone, Ekman here with another video, and today we're going to do a top 8 breakdown for the TCG Con One Piece tournament that happened in person in Texas this past weekend. It was 125 players, which I believe is the largest in-person event we've had here in North America, with 7 rounds of Swiss to a top 8 cut that we see here today. And real quick before we get started, first, if you guys enjoy these videos, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. It just means a lot to me. It's a lot of work to put these together, and especially so on this one. It's a little trickier to get the deck list, everything looking good for that, and also I'm on the road to compound all that, so I really would appreciate those button presses. I also want to thank LFG Nexus for not only running the event, but also for helping me get these deck lists for you guys today. And if you guys don't know about their platform, LFG Nexus is a social media platform for gamers to help connect, find tournaments, and look for games aptly. So I'm going to be posting here for the next little bit. They're working with Best Coast pairings as well to have all of their tournaments, all their deck lists, and everything automatically import into the system, which should be really cool. And I do have some tournaments in stock for the next couple of weeks that I'll be announcing and planning on there too. So be on the lookout. Make sure to check it out if you want to. It's still in development, but I do recommend it. And I think there's a lot of growth for tournament scenes and just everything else, and I think it's really cool. Anyways, going into our top 8 breakdown, it's a very interesting one. And first of all, Midwest always has a different meta than the coast based on my own personal experience, but man, look at those Luffys. I'm super happy to see that Luffy had 3 finishes in this. And then also, I didn't mention this for either, the top 4 ended up splitting at the end. So first, second, third, fourth are technically all the same placing. It's just the pairings based off of their placements on day 1 as far as I know. So all of top 4 essentially are all the same placing, at least for Rising. But again, 3 Luffys, 2 Eustass kids, 2 Zoros, and 1 Doffy. And absent from what we normally see, we don't see any Trafalgar Law, we don't see any Kaido, and I think that's really interesting to see something like that. We almost always have just like one Kaido who just had a really good day get into that top, but we didn't see it in this one. And again, Trafalgar Law, which has been winning, I think, a lot of events in the last couple of weeks, was just also not in this top 8 either, which was very interesting too. So we're going to go into these decks. There are a lot of unique picks, I think, in a lot of these ratios, and we're going to start off with first place's Daniel Alvarez Star Deck Kid. Starting off, we have Daniel Alvarez's first place Eustass Kid, and we've been seeing Eustass Kid go through the works, I think, for the last couple of weeks, and not only is it one of the most consistent ones, but I think we've kind of consistently looked at a pretty similar deck list for most of the things. So not a lot of tech choices, but I think there is. I think there's also a decision that there's a lot of decks that just say, you know what, I'm just going to be doing only character cards, or I am going to sneak in a little bit of these event cards, and this one has a couple of those sneaked event cards in it, but not, I'd say, like the normal ones you would see either. So the changes I would say are the choices on the deck building is 3 Trafalgar Law, which is normally more than you need. Some run 2, some run 0, which is I think fine for this. It is a good blocker in a lot of ways, and it does help you recycle some cards and stuff, but I don't think it's as necessary for this deck as we've seen it in others. X-Drake, which I think is becoming more and more popular as a nice 2 of. I don't think it's been standard necessarily, but I've been seeing it more and more popular as time goes on, and I think it's a good pick for what it is. It's a supernova, it's a 1k counter, and it can pop something 4 or less that is rested, which is pretty easy for there too. Basil Hawkins at 2. This is sometimes like a decision point too, where I think 2 or 3 is probably what I would run in this deck, but there's a lot of people who just run 0. They don't like that it doesn't have a counter or that it doesn't set up, but man, sometimes it's just like prevents your opponent from doing anything. Like, it just gets you so much value if you're able to pull it off, and it's just super strong. Going into the 7 and 8s, I think the 8s normally it's like a 4-2 split or 3-3. Something like this is more popular. I think if they were to choose one big boy, it's going to be the 8 drop instead of the 7 drop. But honestly, 6 between the 2 of these are kind of expensive, especially since we have 6 of these. We have 2 of the Basil Hawkins and 3 of the Trafalgar Laws and 3 Okikus without any counter cost. I think that means that there could be a lot of dead cards in hand, especially since like all of these cards you want to play, like you can't like reactively play them. You have to play them when you have the setup for it, or your opponent gives you time to play it. Sometimes if you have to play reactive, you play all your cards without counters, or sorry, with counters, and then you're stuck with cards without counters in hand sometimes. So it's a little, I'd say, high end for me, but obviously these are some very powerful cards, and if they're able to be established on board, they're very good. And then 2 Paradise Waterfall. I think this is a nice tech here, especially since you're running Momo. Momo can find this, which is cool. Sometimes it can save a card, which is nice. You can refresh blockers. I mean, if you're running 3 Trafalgar Laws, it's very easy to get it to 8k with this, and then you get another blocker for free, which is cool. And then lastly, the 1 of Straw Sword. I really want to like this card, and I think like 1 or 2 makes sense, but man, I wish the trigger just let you rest something. I don't know why. It's like the only, like, I'd say benefit from this is that you could play like a Capone Gang Beige or a Killer from hand if you get that trigger, which you'd probably play anyways, but it's just a weird kind of trigger there. But it's fine there. But also, since all of top 4 split, I do want to mention the other Eustass kid that got into that top 4. So this is Ryan Severin's list, and it pretty much has the other ideology where you don't run any event cards. You don't kind of use any of your Dawn on your opponent's turn, so you're able to be a little bit greedier with your plays and not be kind of stuck with a bunch of dead cards in hand because you ended up doing a play that costed you, all your Dawn. So I think that just makes a lot of sense for me. That's kind of the way I like playing the deck a little bit more, especially since there's so many good 2Ks that you can run in this deck. We have Scratchman and Pooh, which is findable off Bonnie. We have the Izo as well, which is able to not only be found off the Momo, which is running 4 in this version, but also can kind of function as a second copy of Cat Viper 2. So all of this just makes a lot of sense to me, and I think it's honestly the way I like to play the deck a little bit more, but I digress. You guys can make your own decisions. Both of them got to top 4, which is really cool, and congrats to both players. Next up, we have another top 4. So this is Franky Davila's top 4 Luffy. Again, we've seen a lot of Luffys in this top 8. There are 3 of them, and this is this one. And this honestly is looking like very similar to the ones that I have been running. The cards that I would say that have been different, or at least the ones that I don't check, are first the 1-drop Nami. And literally this morning I was asked by a player, why am I not running this card, right? I think I was asked by like 2 people. I had a YouTube comment and a messenger message, but why am I not running this? And my personal opinion on this card is that it's good on like the first 2 turns, and then it kind of loses value over time, right? Especially if you're on Luffy, it doesn't make as much sense to run this. And traditionally, I would say, you know what? I'd rather just get, like, the fact that it's a Nami means you can't find it off your other Nami. The fact that it's like a 1k means that like you have to really bump it up to start doing damage for it. Obviously, it does get 1 free Dawn if you use this effect by playing something, but by and large, I just found when I play this deck that I didn't have, like, I'd usually play like one bigger dude. Sometimes I just had a hard time like getting rested Dawn like halfway through the game. So I think it's fine. It's for what it is. For Luffy, 4 seems like a lot, but I do get the value from it. But again, if you're paying 1 Dawn, this means to play this, it's very poppable, and at the same time, it means you have 1 less card in your hand to do counter power stuff with. But I digress. I don't think it's a bad choice, but it's just not a card on my radar. But it's not a bad choice. Anyways, 3 Nico Robins, you definitely want that. No Beppos in this list. If you look at the other ones, you'll see some are a little bit more aggressive on those Beppo picks too. Sanji, 3 of. Brook, 3 of. Zoro, Trafalgar Law at 2 to help you go with the Nico Robins and the Jet Pistol, which we have 4 of. And then the top end, 4 of the Star Deck Luffy, which makes sense there. 2 of the promo one, which I've been wanting to do more experimenting with. And if you're playing the Nami that lets you do this, that just means that you do get to do this on turn 6 and give it rush. So that does make sense to me in that regard as well. There is that nice, like, if you're going second, you play Nami on like turn 1 when you have 2 Dawn, and then you Luffy on turn 6 to get that rush. It's a 9k rush that they're going to have to start to try to get rid of the next turn too, which would be pretty hard to do. I think that's worth it. I think that's fine for what it is. It's just a different play style than I usually play it. 3 Shanks, and then 3 of the in 2 years, which is nice to help you find Namis in pretty much all these cards, which is just another good card. Reason to run the 6-dot promo. So anyways, I like this list. I like Luffy, and I'm happy that it got that top 4 finish. So congrats again to Franky there. Next up, we have another top 4 list. This is Spencer Jackson's Zoro list they ran, and it was really a really interesting list to see this one too. So it's running like a lot. Okay, this is my theory. This is my headcanon for this deck based on ratios, based on the cards that I'm seeing. I'm gonna bet money that Spencer only bought could only get one of the red Star Deck Luffys, and they got two of the Film Red promo packs, and then just a bunch of packs, right? Because you'll see that there's only two of the Jet Pistol, there's two Luffys, there's two of the Brook, all of the 2-ofs from that set, right? And then you run a bunch of the Film Red 2-ofs too. You have two Beppos, two of the Kobe, which hasn't been seeing as much play, but I do think it makes sense a little bit in Zoro, just the fact that you can play it for free and then bump it for 2 to get that effect too. And then also like 2 of the Yasop, 2 of the Trafalgar Law, and 2 of the Sunny Kun as well. So that is my headcanon. They had only limited cards. They didn't have everything they wanted, but they still made a really strong deck and was able to get that top 4, which is really cool to see. So anything else from this? It's running a little bit of like the 4K package, obviously. Sunny, I think, is going to be really good in set 2. You've seen that be very well. It also is a Straw Hat crew, which means that you do get the Find Off Nami, which is kind of nice. If you were running Jambe, you could also give it Jambe too. Uta is a great card for this deck too, especially since you're going to have a lot of cards to recycle, especially the Zoro, and just everything else from there. Seeing also a weird top end too. You normally don't see as big of a top end for the Zoro decks, but Yasop at 2 of, and then also the Shanks as well. Shanks, I think, is understood. Yasop is a really interesting choice, but again, a 6-drop 8K means that your opponent's going to have a hard time getting rid of this in a lot of ways, unless you're playing against purple, and then you have a lot of rush versions and variants to try to get rid of that. So obviously, I think purple is the best matchup for this, so they teched in a card that would help you win other matchups, but probably be a little bit removable for purple there. So anyways, that is the list. Again, congrats to Spencer there. Let me know, Spencer, if you're watching this, let me know if I was on point with my guess for your card restrictions, and that will be it. So that is our top 4 Zoro, and to finish it off, we do have Daniel Lee's top, top 8 Don Filingo Doffy. This is a also interesting deck too, but I'd say kind of basic in a lot of ways, because obviously you're kind of restricted to the cards that you can run in this, because you have to be running the 7 Warlords. But the choices for me, 4 Draco Mihawks, which is a lot. It's a very, very confident choice of these. These are great when you slam them down. Once they hit the board, they're really hard to get rid of, and they usually kind of get rid of something previously. Don Quixote Doflamingo is kind of in the same spot. The only issue with this, and you have to be very smart as a Doffy player, which I'm going to assume Daniel was if you got this top 8 finish, is that if you're playing Draco Mihawk on with 9 Dawn, it means that you will have to skip a turn with your leader, right? So if the previous turn you know is the top of your deck, you have to plan it to skip a card to be able to play the Dracula Mihawk on that next turn, and then play, do the top 5 effect, right? So that's something that needs a lot of forethought for a very big brain deck. Don Quixote Don Flamingo, you can do both as long as you have exactly 10 Don. Virgo, which I think has been an incredibly popular pick for blue decks, just because it's a great card to kind of play and it's get a lot of value from throughout the game. Your regular 7 Warlords, they're also running Kuma, even though they're not running any Pacifistas, which is no doubt this is just kind of a tricky card. Obviously, it's a 5k blocker, which is just fine as it is, especially if you play it for free. But just the fact, like, you play it, and your opponent's going to have to make that decision, like, do I put resources to get rid of this card, and then they play a Pacifista, right? And so some people will just refuse to remove this just in case that happens. So to run a deck that it will never happen, but you can probably still play that, like, oh, will they, won't they kind of thing, I think is a neat little mind game tech there too. Anything else? 4 Level Up Beam, which is a lot, but this is a great card. The fact that it draws is great. 4 Ovida, 4 Perona. Yeah, I think this is definitely a deck that's very archetype based. You have to run the archetype stuff anyways. There are some good cards like Gecko Mori and Boa Hancock that lets you draw. Marshall D Teach, which lets you get some early tempo, and then Don Quixote do Flamingo, which lets you be a blocker and set up your top cards as well. So I think this is probably pretty straightforward for a Doffy deck, but obviously it got results. So again, congratulations to Daniel there, and that will be it for me. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Be on the lookout for more One Piece tournament results, especially when we get into February, and that's going to be it for me. So again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.
Damn it.